Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be going over one of the new uniques, and this is the Necromancer Sword, or Dagger, sorry. It's called the Mortacrux. I think they took a lot of the, inspiration for the names for these new unique items, because there's one for the Rogue too, and they both have, crux in the name. I always think Harry Potter with, Horcruxes. This one in particular is really interesting because it has a very interesting little effect at the bottom, and we'll talk about that. So first off, it does have 50% damage implicit on it, so that's just passive. So you can't beef that up in any way with masterworking, but it does get just a 50% bonus. It's additive bonus. We also get 126 to 180 intelligence. We get 98 to 125% critical strike damage, and then we also get a nice 62.5 to 85% vulnerable damage. And then we get 3 to 5 to the Hued Flesh passive, which Hued Flesh is the one that basically gives you large amounts of corpses on a lucky hit. It's a lucky hit. Your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. The chance is doubled against bosses, so it's 24% versus bosses. And of course, this is going to give you a massive plus 5 if you get the maximum version, which is going to obviously double that to what is that, 12, and then we also get 4% per. So we've got 24, 26, 27, 20, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 33 times 2 on bosses, so 33% chance. And then we also get the double, so we get 66% chance on bosses. So it's going to give you a lot of additional corpses that you're going to be generating through your attacks. On top of this, it also says when consuming a corpse, there is a 10 to 30% chance to also create a decaying simulacrum. I believe that's how you say that, simulacrum, that seeks enemies but cannot attack. When it dies, it explodes for 13,236 shadow damage. And this effect is treated as a macabre skill. So we've got a lot of things going on here. First off, it's when you consume a corpse. So this would be very good, obviously, with are you chewing on my buttons? Don't chew on my buttons. Jerk. Don't be cute. I caught you. Button chewer. First off, it's shadow damage. So if you're scaling a Shadow Necromancer, this is going to be really interesting. And I would imagine that this would work very synergistically, obviously, with the Corpse Explosion that turns into a Shadow skill. Will you quit chewing on my button, sir? So you get the Shadow, obviously, Corpse Explosion, and every time you do the Shadow Corpse Explosion, you're also going to get a chance to get the Shadow damage coming from the Skeletal Simulacrum. It's also treated as a Macabre skill, and there's a lot of ways that you can get additional bonuses with Macabre skills. So let's play around with it for a little bit here, and let's see if we can get some of these Simulacrums to come out. It might be better if we utilize... the no minion approach here. So let's go ahead and sack the minions. This is literally just so that we can really see it, because otherwise we're not going to be able to see it very well. Let's go ahead and put Corpse Explosion on the bar, and I'm gonna avoid the Shadow one too because I want to really see it. So let's go ahead and see if we can get these Simulacrums. Now it doesn't look like they die on their own. If I'm seeing what's going on, so it looks like they have to be killed, or maybe they're on a timer. Okay, so they are on a timer. So even if you don't have them, getting killed, they do actually are on a timer. So that's interesting. Since they act as Macabre skills, this also means that you can scale them with Macabre damage and other Macabre type effects. To give you an example, Bone Spirit is also considered a Macabre skill. And on top of that, we also have the Blood Mist as a Macabre skill, and I believe also Bone Prison, yes, is a Macabre skill. So this is going to activate a very interesting correlation there between the Shadow skills and the Macabre skills, which could give you an additional way to scale that damage. The other interesting thing here is that as a Shadow Necromancer, you are obviously trying to work always toward your Shadow Blight key passive. That's how this works. So for instance, if I go ahead and pull in the Shadow Blight key passive, for instance, although I'm not really a Shadow Necromancer, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So it says Shadow Blight, Shadow damage infects the enemies with a Shadow Blight for 2 seconds, and they drop this to every 8th from 10th, by the way. So every 8th time an enemy receives Shadow damage from you or your minions, while they are affected by Shadow Blights, they take an additional damage. Shadow Blight's damage is increased by over 100% times your Shadow damage over time bonus, right? So when you're doing this, and let's go ahead and pull up the Reapers again, because I'm using them to create corpses, which is sometimes an issue. Let's go ahead and put the sword on, because that will give me a much easier time of creating corpses, because I'll have 3 points in hewed flesh. And then we can, of course, grab our skeletons back here, so they can create me a whole bunch of corpses. Obviously, with this, you're probably going to want as many corpses as you could potentially get. Because every single time you consume a corpse with this, you're going to potentially get one of the Simulacrum. And then every time that they explode, they're going to add 1 to your potential damage output for your Shadow Blight key passive. So we're going to get 1 explosion, which is going to give us another step toward our Shadow Blight. And obviously, once you get a certain number of Shadow Blight key passives, and let's go ahead and just get as many of these going as we can, we're going to get damage bumps, and if we add on, just for the time being, it doesn't really matter. If we add on the shadow aspect, obviously, so we're getting the shadow damage with the corpse explosions, we're going to be able to get the shadow damage coming from the corpses, and we're also going to be able to get the shadow damage coming from the corpse explosion, and then we have multiple shadow damage effects hitting the target at any given time. So we're going to be getting lots of Shadow Blight key passives, as well as the explosions from the pumps. It's a very interesting way to potentially scale your shadow damage, and also potentially use a Shadow Corpse Explosion. I think that's probably a very interesting way to treat this. You can also potentially get this, though, by consuming the corpses with your skeleton warriors as well, and your skeleton mages. So you don't necessarily have to use Corpse Explosion. You could potentially just be resurrecting your minions, like, for instance, I'm doing here. So I can just resurrect my minions, and as I resurrect my minions with the Mortacrux attached, I should be getting some of the little guys just standing there doing their thing. Although it doesn't seem like it is. It's always good to test this stuff. I do not see any. Let's go to the corpse explosion. Of course, they look like the skeletons, and I not have it equipped, of course. Of course. Okay. Yeah, so it should be working with the skeletons, just rezzing the skeletons. Yeah, there we go. So even just rezzing the skeletons, you're going to be able to get this. So it's not like you have to have Corpse Explosion on the bar, but it would definitely work with either one. And if you had Corpse Explosion and the raised skeletons on the bar, that would just be more opportunities to potentially create these exploding warriors. The explosion itself is actually pretty large, too, when you see it go off. Like, it's not exactly a small explosion. It goes about to here. I mean, that's not bad as far as a range goes. It's not bad at all, to be perfectly honest. I think that this is a really interesting way to potentially make a very fun Corpse Explosion Necromancer. Obviously, it gives you a bunch of additional minions. Another interesting thing that we could test with this, and because this has happened in the past, and I feel like we're kind of obligated to at least give this a try. So let me go really quickly. I'm going to take an aspect and put it on my character. It's the one that scales maximum resource based on the number of minions that you currently have active. And I'm kind of interested to see if potentially, and this is just an idea, but well, sometimes when you're doing these videos, you come up with neat ideas. And there's an aspect that basically allows you to scale your maximum resource for your minions. So if we go in here and we grab, I think it's called the Resource Requiem. Yeah, it's the Requiem aspect. So let's just go ahead and throw this on a random ring. Doesn't really matter. And we're going to put this random ring on for the time being. What we're going to do is we're going to see if our maximum resource goes up when we summon additional Skeletons. Oh, that's basically the gist of it, right? So I just want to see if like just adding skeletons to the total is going to increase our maximum resource. So we currently have 234 maximum resource, so we'll keep an eyeball on that. And utilizing the Mortacrux, actually we need to put the Mortacrux on. Utilizing the Mortacrux, we're at 190. All right, so 190. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spam the summon minions. And we're currently at 194. So let's keep on doing this. Let's see how many of these we can potentially generate, utilizing as many of these as we possibly can. And I think we could probably make more with corpse explosions than we could, because corpse explosions would also potentially create more corpses, right? Let's actually really like lean into this, and let's pull up the multiple training dummies. We've got all our corpses. All right, so let's just hold down the corpse explosion button. And let's see how ridiculous we can potentially make this. So, I'm at 200 right now. 198, 200. And of course, the thing is that mine sucks. So, mine currently sucks at only 2. It's only 2 maximum essence per active minion. So it looks like I am, in fact, increasing my maximum essence per active Mortacrux monster, which is really interesting. So, like, in this particular case, I'm sitting at 4 minions. But when the Mortacruxes are active, and let's go ahead and take it off and put it back on. So, yes, I'm back down to 190. As you can see, go ahead and pop up a Mortacrux. Mortacrux, Simulcrum, and we're at 194, 196. It's really interesting. So they do actually function as minions. That's really quite neat. There are actually some things within the game that do function based on the number of minions that you currently have active. Like, for instance, the Requiem Circle, but there's some more that also function based on the number of minions. So it'd be interesting to see with this particular item if you could potentially even scale further because of that. And it's not like, you know, you have to technically be using the Corpse Explosion skill for damage. Or your skeletons for damage. You really just have to be using a skill, which is, of course, creating corpses. Now, the interesting thing about the Hued Flesh passive there is that, as you could clearly see, once I get to a certain point with the corpses, there's like no end to the corpses, because the Hued Flesh passive is just creating an exceedingly large number of corpses for me. So I never run out of corpses no matter what, which is pretty darn cool. And would allow you to infinitely, of course, hold down Corpse Explosion. Now I want to build a Corpse Explosion build. This sounds really neat. It'll have to be something fun that I'll test out eventually. It really gets the old brain meats pumping, doesn't it? I think that's one of the really cool things about these new uniques that they've been adding, is they're very useful in creating interesting builds. One pair of twin daggers forbidden from ever meeting at near corpses shudder in its presence. Nearby corpses shudder in its presence. But yeah, what you could possibly do is you could use it to scale your maximum resource, which could be interesting. You could also, of course, use it to create large numbers of corpses. If you're on a necromancer, you're probably utilizing the passives that enhance your damage based on the number of corpses that you've recently consumed, and that's also going to be very handy here, because you're going to have plenty of corpses available with +5 to Hued Flesh. And obviously, you can masterwork this. You can get it higher. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where you probably have nearly a 100% chance to create a corpse around a boss. I mean, all you have to do is get it to 50%, and even with the 5 and 3 in Hued Flesh, you're already at 33, and then double that to 66. So if you can raise that up just a little bit more to 50%, you've basically got a 100% chance to create a corpse whenever you attack a boss, which is honestly by itself extremely powerful for any Corpse Explosion build, because one of the issues with Corpse Explosion builds is you might not necessarily have enough corpses active at all times, but with something like this, you should potentially always have a corpse active at all times, and basically not only always have a corpse active, but an infinite number of them, which is also pretty darn cool in my opinion. I'm still trying to like rack my brain on how I could potentially use that macabre damage, but I don't want to let this video run too long. Let me know what you guys think about this. Have you made any cool builds with it this season? Are you interested in it? You know, like I think there's a lot of really powerful builds this season, and maybe this isn't like the most powerful build this season, but it's definitely a very interesting one to keep an eye out for. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when I'm just, you know, like going over the Mortacrux. I did forget to talk about where you find the Mortacrux, and the Mortacrux does drop from the Infernal Hells. It's one of the new uniques that drops from the new event area, the Infernal Hells. That's where I got mine anyway. So if you're looking for one, you're going to have to go on your Necromancer and do Infernal Hells. Anyway, as always, be sure to say hi to Mr. Dusty Bones. And as always, keep watching. Boop.